The Atlantic was strangely quiet. No engines, no gunfire. Only the sound of men trying to stay alive. Beneath a moonlit sky, 9 American sailors floated together in the warm waters of the Florida Straits. Only minutes earlier, they had been flying. Now pieces of their airship drifted around them as the rest slowly sunk beneath the surface. There were no rescue ships, only darkness and open ocean. Then someone saw it. A dark shape gliding just beneath the surface. The first shark circled silently. Then another. The exhausted crew instinctively pulled together, forming a tight circle in the water. One sailor couldn't keep up. He was injured during the crash. The others shouted for him to swim faster. Then the water exploded. For one terrifying instant, they saw him again. Blood covered his horrified face and shoulders. He vanished beneath the waves, screaming. The remaining crew pressed together, back to back, gripping the only weapons they had left, pocket knives. They waited for the sharks, and they waited for dawn. If someone told you an American Navy blimp fought a German submarine during World War II, you might assume they confused a few details. After all, blimps weren't warships. They weren't even expected to fight. Their mission was simple: find the enemy and keep them in sight. But on the night of July 18, 1943, one crew made a decision that broke every expectation. Their airship would become the only United States Navy blimp ever lost in combat. And the more I researched it, the more unbelievable the story became. One crewman would never return home, and for decades, historians believed the attack itself had failed. But the evidence tells a different story. To understand how 9 men ended up surrounded by sharks, we need to go back. Not years, just 30 minutes. A little before midnight, Navy blimp K-74 drifted quietly over the Florida Straits. Inside the small control car, the mood was calm. Lieutenant Nelson Grills sat outside the controls. Around him, the crew carried out another routine patrol. The radar operator scanned the darkness ahead. The radio man monitored the airwaves. The bombardier checked the depth charges suspended beneath the airship. Below them, 3 merchant ships steamed steadily through the straits. An empty tanker, a freighter, another cargo ship. Individually, they didn't seem remarkable, but in the summer of 1943, every ship mattered. Germany's U-boats had spent years trying to choke the Allied supply lines. Thousands of merchant sailors had already lost their lives. Fuel, food, ammunition, every cargo ship crossing the Atlantic helped keep Britain in the war. Protecting those ships had become one of the U.S. Navy's highest priorities, which is exactly why K-74 was there. Despite their harmless appearance, Navy blimps had become remarkably effective submarine hunters. Not because they carried overwhelming firepower, they didn't. A K-class blimp cruised at barely 70 miles an hour. It carried only a handful of depth charges and a single .50 caliber machine gun. Against a surfaced U-boat, it was badly outgunned. Its real advantage was patience. While airplanes had to return to the base after only a few hours, a blimp could remain over the ocean all day, watching, waiting, searching for the one mistake every submarine eventually had to make: surfacing. If a U-boat appeared, the blimp's job wasn't to attack. It was to shadow the submarine, radio nearby destroyers, and keep the enemy from escaping. That was the doctrine. It had worked, and Lieutenant Grills knew it well. But within moments, he would abandon it completely. At 11:40 that night, the radar operator spotted something, 8 miles ahead. Grills immediately turned K-74 toward the contact. As the blimp descended through scattered clouds, everyone strained to see into the darkness below. Then, moonlight caused a wake. A submarine, running on the surface. Its course pointed directly toward the merchant ships K-74 had just passed. For a moment, Grills hesitated. American submarines also operated in these waters. He ordered his gunner to hold fire unless the submarine fired first. If it proved friendly, no one would die by mistake. Seconds later, orange tracer rounds erupted from the submarine's deck. There was no longer any doubt. Grills had found his enemy. The first burst of tracer fire streaked through the darkness. It wasn't a warning. The submarine had made its choice. Lieutenant Grills didn't hesitate. He pushed K-74 into a shallow dive. The blimp accelerated towards the U-boat. It was an extraordinary decision. Navy blimps weren't supposed to attack submarines alone. Their job was to observe, report, and wait for destroyers or aircraft to arrive. But Grills could see exactly where the submarine was headed, the 3 merchant ships. By the time help arrived, it would almost certainly be too late. If those ships were going to survive, K-74 would have to stop the attack itself. The distance closed rapidly, 1,000 yards, 800, 600. The submarine's anti-aircraft guns opened fire. Orange tracers tore through the night, climbing toward the slow-moving blimp. Petty Officer Walter Eckert answered with the airship's .50 caliber machine gun. Its steady rhythm echoed across the water as bright streaks reached back towards the submarine's bridge. For a few brief moments, the impossible was happening. A Navy blimp and a German U-boat were exchanging gunfire in the middle of the Florida Straits. Grills held his course. The bombardier Isidor Stessel stood ready over the release controls for the depth charges. Everything depended on timing. Too early, and the explosions would miss. Too late, and they'd fly directly over the submarine. Then, the U-boat found its mark. A burst of cannon fire ripped into the K-74. The starboard engines erupted in flames. Bullets tore through the control car. More punched into the blimp's fabric above. Inside the envelope, helium began pouring into the night sky. The airship lurched violently upward. Grills fought the controls with both hands. For a moment, K-74 seemed almost weightless. Then the nose dropped. The burning engine sputtered. The blimp began losing altitude, fast. The attack had lasted less than a minute. The fight for survival was just beginning. The crew knew exactly what was happening. A blimp could survive small punctures, even dozens of them, but sustained cannon fire was another matter entirely. The helium that had kept K-74 aloft was escaping too quickly. Grills tried everything. Fuel tanks were jettisoned to lighten the ship. The crew shifted their weight. Engine power was adjusted. Nothing worked. The ocean rose steadily beneath them. Despite the chaos, there was remarkably little panic. Every man had trained for emergencies. They knew their jobs. They knew what came next. Grills ordered confidential documents thrown overboard. Code books, charts, anything that could be useful to the enemy disappeared into the sea. The crew prepared the life raft. If they were lucky, they'd be rescued before sunrise. If they weren't, the Florida Straits could be as deadly as the battle they had just survived. Just before midnight, K-74 touched the water. The landing was surprisingly gentle. For an instant, it almost seemed as though the blimp might stay afloat. Then, the ocean claimed it. Abandoned ship! The crew climbed into the dark water, one by one. As they did, the life raft inflated perfectly. Then, without anyone noticing, it drifted away. No one had secured the line. The only raft they had slowly disappeared into the darkness. The men watched helplessly. Things had just become much worse. Lieutenant Grills wasn't finished. Believing that there might be still useful equipment on board, he climbed back into the sinking control car. He searched for a pistol, looked for anything that might help his men survive the night. By the time he climbed back outside, the current had carried him away from the crew. He called out. His men never heard him. The darkness swallowed his voice. The others searched for him as long as they could. Eventually, they reached the conclusion no one wanted to say aloud. Their captain had gone down with the airship. Around them, the last of the K-74 slipped beneath the surface. Now there was nothing left to hold on to, only open water. Hours passed. The moon drifted overhead. The men floated together, trying to conserve energy. No one spoke very much. Then, one of them noticed a fin. Another appeared. The sharks had arrived. The exhausted crew instinctively tightened their circle, back to back, watching every direction at once. 3 small pocket knives were passed between them, against sharks. They were almost useless, but they were all the crew had left. Then one sailor drifted behind. He'd been injured during the battle. His life jacket had partially deflated. The others shouted for him to swim faster. He tried. Then the water exploded. For a split second, they saw blood, then nothing. The sharks disappeared into the darkness, and so did their shipmate. The remaining crew drew closer together. No one slept. They simply waited for dawn. The first light of dawn finally broke across the Florida Straits. After hours in the water, the exhausted survivors spotted something on the horizon, an American ship. The destroyer, USS Dahlgren, had been searching through the night after losing radio contact with K-74. One by one, the survivors were pulled from the water, cold, exhausted, and in shock. 8 men had survived, 1 had not, or so they believed. Nearly 19 hours after the crash, Lieutenant Nelson Grills was found alive. Separated from his crew by the current, he had spent almost an entire day alone in the open ocean before another Navy blimp finally spotted him. Against extraordinary odds, every member of K-74's crew had survived, except aviation machinist's mate, second class Isidore Stessel, who had been killed in the shark attack. The battle was over, but the story wasn't.
This is where the story took an unexpected turn for me. Every source I read repeated the same claim. K-74 had never dropped its depth charges. But when I started comparing records, something didn't add up.
For decades, the official story seemed straightforward. K-74 had bravely attacked the submarine, but its depth charges had never been released. The attack had failed, or so everyone believed. Years later, researchers began comparing American reports with surviving German records. The crew had always insisted that the bombs had been released. The German submarine U-134 reported explosions dangerously close alongside. It also reported damage after the attack. Modern historians now believe Stessel released at least part of K-74's bomb load before the blimp lost control. If that's true, then history had overlooked something remarkable. The crew didn't simply make a courageous attack. They may have actually damaged the submarine they were never supposed to fight. The 3 merchant ships continued safely through the Florida Straits. The submarine escaped that night, but only temporarily. Just weeks later, U-134 was heavily damaged by Allied aircraft in the Bay of Biscay. It never returned to combat. Years later, Lieutenant Nelson Grills received the Distinguished Flying Cross. His crew received Navy Commendation Medals. Official recognition had finally caught up with history, but medals aren't why this story deserves to be remembered. On paper, K-74 wasn't supposed to win. It was slower, lighter, and hopelessly outgunned. Its mission wasn't to destroy submarines, only to find them. But on one summer night in 1943, one crew looked down at 3 defenseless merchant ships, saw a submarine closing in, and decided that waiting for help wasn't good enough. Their airship never came home. One of their shipmates never came home. But neither did the submarine succeed in the attack it was preparing to make. Sometimes the greatest stories of war aren't remembered because they changed history. Sometimes they're remembered because ordinary people choose extraordinary courage, knowing exactly what it might cost them. On a quiet night over the Florida Straits, 9 men proved that even the slowest aircraft in the American arsenal could still stand between innocent lives and the enemy.
Stories like K-74 remind me that history isn't just about the famous battles everybody knows. Sometimes it's about a handful of ordinary people whose courage almost slipped through the cracks. Thanks for watching, and if you love forgotten stories like this, I'd love to have you back for the next one.